I don't feel uncomfortable if we're not getting anywhere or if the person is just pausing for a long time and trying to collect themselves. I just wait. And I think that sort of changed me as a collaborative presence, I think.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Songwriter Saturday. I'm Alyssa Gonzalez. Today's guest is Grammy Award-winning songwriter, producer, and musician Dan Wilson. Dan is best known for being one-third of the iconic trio Semisonic. He's also worked with artists like Adele, Leon Bridges, Taylor Swift, John Legend, and Rick Rubin, to name a few. Dan, thanks so much for joining me.
Super happy to be here.
You studied visual arts in Harvard. How did you make the switch from visual arts and printmaking to becoming a singer and songwriter?
It almost felt like the two were, visual art and music were sort of interchangeable in my school life. And I think it was almost like fate that decided that I was going to be more of a musician, because I got into this band with my brother called Trip Shakespeare. We just got really busy. And by the time Semisonic started, I couldn't make enough art for my gallery to show. And it just felt more like, oh, I'm just going to be a musician for a while. And it almost didn't feel like it was too much of a conscious choice.
I was reading that you wrote Closing Time because the band was looking for a song to end shows with. Did you think when you were writing this song, oh, this is going to be a hit, this is going to be playing at every bar at 3 a.m., like for the rest of eternity?
When I wrote Closing Time, I was in touring life, and the touring was nightclubs and bars. It wasn't theaters or, arenas or anything like that. It was like small places, and there was always bartenders there. And there was always a bar time and the last call. I literally had this vision that I was very delighted by, that the bartenders and bouncers around the country were going to use it at the end of the night. And actually, one of the line, "You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here," was what the bouncers at the 400 would always yell that at the end of the night. And I don't know, I just thought, oh, they're going to laugh when they hear this phrase like in a song. They're going to laugh so hard.
Adele's 21 album is one of my top 5 albums ever. I'm so curious how you started writing Someone Like You and One and Only with her.
There was maybe a time before Adele and I met when I was contacted by Rick Rubin, who was producing her. And he and I had done a lot of work together. And he told me in this it was almost cute. He was like, "I think you could write something really great," which is also planting a seed. That's that intention, We launched into this song, Someone Like You, which didn't have a title yet, but it was those first 3 or 4 lines. And obviously going to be a beautiful song. And she was playing something like the piano riff on the bass. So she was going boom, 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 boom. And it was the sketch of the piano part, actually, but we didn't realize it at the time. And so we tried to write to that bass, and then she switched over to a guitar and did a similar thing on the guitar. And then she finally got a little bit impatient with the guitar and the bass, and she said, why don't you try playing something on the piano? Once we switched over to her singing and me playing the piano, it all started happening really smoothly, and it was still laborious. It still took a lot of work, and we were halfway done by the end of the first day.
When you're in these rooms with Adele and she's pouring her heart out to you and you're writing these emotional songs, how do you as a songwriter create those safe spaces?
When I first started out in music, I was a good listener musically. I wasn't as good of a human listener. My wife and I had a daughter who spent 11 months in intensive care and then stepped down ICU. One of the outcomes in her life is that she's very hard of hearing and has serious disabilities in processing verbal outgoing speech. She can tell what we're saying, but it takes her forever to answer. I think that turned me into someone who could wait for a long time while someone tried to formulate their thought. And I think that helps because I don't feel the need to like steer it, and I don't feel uncomfortable if we're not getting anywhere, or if the person is just pausing for a long time and trying to collect themselves. Sometimes in a session, it's good to not overlap, is to like leave a little pause, because the person might actually add something during the pause that's even more valuable and perfect for the song.
So we've spoken a lot about Rick Rubin during this interview, and you've said that Rick Rubin has been a major mentor in your life. What's one thing you've learned from him?
Rick Rubin has been a big influence in my musical life. Before we met, I listened to the records he produced a ton. And I used to have Wildflowers by Tom Petty on the table in my studio, just sitting out as a reminder of what greatness was really like. I really thought that was such a great album. And I always, wondered what it was like for them to work together and what Rick was like and stuff like that. And then I met him, and we ended up making a bunch of music together. And he's got a lot of perspective and a lot of practically won wisdom about music. One of the biggest ones is this: did you finish that version of the song with a string quartet? Yeah, Rick, I did. We muted all the other instruments, and we started over, and we hired a string quartet, and we arranged the parts, and it was very much harder than I thought it would be, and it was, but here it is. It sounds pretty cool. So let's listen. So listen with Rick to the brand new string quartet revision version of the song. And the song is done, and Rick is like very comfortably listening and like, wow, man. And he says, what did you think? And you say, I think it sounds great. And he goes, I do too. Which version do you like best? He says. And you say, well, Rick, I hate to say it, but I think I still like the original one without the string quartet better. And Rick says, me too. And like, just to be able to say all that labor and effort and like learning gave us the opportunity to A-B the two. Let go of all the labor you did and all the effort and your ego, and you're sort of like, we made a thing. That's like half of the problem in music is you made a thing. So now you've got to defend it with your life, But if you have someone that's so calm and so like impartial and has great ears, and they're saying, I think the demo is better. You find yourself more free to say, you're right.
I love that. I'm interested in how you approach different writing sessions. When you're going into a writing session with a newer artist like Alec Benjamin, compared to someone like, Carole King, what are the expectations there? What's your mindset going into those writing sessions?
Well, my mindset writing with Carole was I was just so starstruck. I mean, I think maybe my sort of reverence for her allowed me to not really have any kind of concept of what it was we were trying to do. We're just going to try to write something really great. I knew so many things about the details of her musical ideas, So at one point I played a little chord progression that's very Carole King. It was like, almost would be like a joke, or like a celebrity impression, of Carol's piano playing. And I said, what about this? And she laughed, and she knew what I was doing, but we ended up using it because it sounded great in that spot on the song. So it was sort of a joke, but not a joke, And she kind of knew that I was nervous. I think she spent a little bit of energy just calming me down and, whispering in my musical ear, just like, it's gonna be fine, it's gonna be fine. I don't know if there was any of that going on with Alec Benjamin. I kind of like to come at it like as a peer, no matter who I'm with. Like I don't really want to teach anybody anything. I want to learn stuff. And so I'm happier when the person that I'm with is surprising me, and I almost want to take notes. Like, wow, that was amazing. And that can happen with anybody. It doesn't have to be someone who's a legend or, a wizard.
If you could go back to the beginning of your career, what's one piece of advice that you would give yourself?
The thing that I learned slowly was that incredibly valuable to have a mentor in your life. I learned from my mentors was how to be an artist in the world. And there's a lot of ways an artist can get discouraged, and capitalism is not set up for artists to be what they naturally are. It's just not set up. But if you have an older person in your life who's doing it with some grace or rage or whatever it is that keeps them doing it, you can see an example of someone who's swimming upstream against that capitalist, tide or whatever. You're not alone if you feel like, as an artist, the world was laid out for someone entirely different than you. But seeing someone who's doing that dance and making a life out of it is incredible when you're in your early stages.
Thank you so much, Dan. That was amazing.
Yeah, that was cool.
I could sit here and chat all day.
Well, we don't have to go home, but we can't stay here.
Can't stay here for sure. Thank you so much again, Dan.